and welcome. All right, so this is another sort of deep dive into one of these crazy, crazy things on the internet. So, this is all about a person who has been publishing for a number of years that he's an immunologist and that basically all vaccinations can cause every single autoimmune disease and many communicable diseases as well. Yeah, which seems like nonsense on the surface of it, but yeah, let's dig deeper. Yeah, and see if it's nonsense all the way down, which I think it is. So our boy is called J. Bart Klassen. There's his name right there. This is uh, the original thing that was brought to my attention and from the Defender, Children's Health Defense, yeah, which I believe is a staunch anti-vax publication. And so they're saying, okay, we've got this immunologist who's saying that, yeah, vaccination against COVID 19 can cause, it says here, long term chronic illnesses. And he has said things like this before, but specifically it's pointing to a paper where he says that it can cause prion disease, which is like mad cow disease. Yeah. So let's go. Let's go. All right. So that's the Defender. This is, pardon me, there we go. This is the paper in question. And you can see it is a monograph, single author, going it alone. Yeah, like Luke Skywalker, except that he had all those other people helping him. And yeah, J. Bart Klassen does not. Yeah. Yeah. Whenever I see single author publications, I don't know. There have been one or two that were just good ideas that were real quick and could come out of a head and go down on paper, and that's okay. All the rest have been just the zaniest sort of nonsense you would ever want to read. It's an interesting source if you're looking for something controversial and just off the wall. Go for those single author publications. Yeah, particularly in lower tier journals, and especially if it's like an opinion thing sort of journal, which is what we've got. Okay, so what do we have? What is this thing? So we're saying that we can get prion disease, which is like new variant CJD, but he's not saying it's that one. He's saying it is caused by one of these other two things, which are sort of bendy, foldy proteins. Let's see, TDP43 and FUS. So these are proteins that can get bent out of shape and then can kind of twist into shapes where they become really difficult to break down. And they can build up, and when they build up, it can cause brain disease. So that's actually all reasonable science. And he hasn't invented any of that or, yeah, discovered any of that or done anything like that. So don't worry. Yeah. Let's see. What he's looking for in there are particular cryptic sequences. So in this case, he's looking for the RNA letters UG in particular. And there are a couple other things like GGUA he thinks might also be portentous. Yeah. Because these are things that proteins could bind, and this could cause bad things to happen. The first thing you want to do, though, is just, yeah, set your coffee down or your haterade, whatever it is, and think about it. How many different nucleotides are there in RNA? For normal messenger RNA, there are 4. So A, C, G, U. Fine. So how rare would a series UG be on average? And you would expect to find one about every 256 random nucleotides. Um, but as it turns out, they're actually a little bit higher in some sequences, which is fine, yeah, because they're okay. Next thing to figure or to think about is, are you already being exposed to the sequence UG without being vaccinated? Because that's a thing that he doesn't appear to have really considered at all ever. And so I thought I would look at that. And so let's go. We've got another tab open here. So, first of all, this is his contention. So, this is the spike gene of the SARS coronavirus 2. So, there it is. And you can actually find them all. So, in this case, it's pretending it's DNA. So, instead of U, it's going to put T. And so, it'll say TG instead of UG. But we know it's going to be expressed as a messenger RNA, so it will be UG. Anyway, you can put it in there, it'll pop up. And this is actually finding 20 of them. Now, he was only able to find 16 of those in his paper, and I'm not sure why the other 4 didn't show up. I would also say that searching it this way, we run into problems. So if there's a TG that goes from the end of this line to the beginning of the next line, this won't actually find it. So there may be 1 or 2 more in here. But that's just showing you that it does exist and at a fairly normal rate. Yeah, so 20, and this whole gene is, if I remember right, about 3,800 nucleotides. So it's about 1 in every 200 nucleotides, which is really not far from what we would expect. But, so you could say, oh, well, there it is, case closed, right? We've proved it. Yeah, congratulations. You too can write a paper in whatever that journal is. You probably can. But let's look at a different gene. So I pulled up beta globin. There's 2 forms of it. I looked at 1 and 2. They're almost identical, so that's fine. This is beta globin number 2. And actually, the results are the same for both of them. So if you put in your little search for TG, which is UG, you find 5 of them. You find 5 in each of those sequences. Thing is, this whole sequence is only 586 long, so you have 1 per 100 nucleotides in the beta globin gene. Why do we care? Well, beta globin, gamma globin, all these globins are kind of what we call housekeeping genes. They are really, really common, and there's tons of them expressed in every living cell, or virtually every living cell. So this is one example of a gene. There are many more. They all have UG signals. So if UG was causing bad things to happen, then yeah, presumably you would see it just regularly. Now, part of the contention, I think, is that because the vaccine is going in and it could be floating around, not inside of a cell, maybe it could directly interact with these things, and there's no proof that that can actually happen. And the RNA is not, as far as we know, traveling on the outside where bad things can happen to it, because if it was, bad things would happen to it. It would break down very fast, and they wouldn't be very effective. The RNA is in these little lipid nanoparticles, which are a nice little blob of some lipids and some cholesterol. And yeah, they're tucked away inside there because otherwise they would not work. They would break down really fast. So anyway, I don't think there's anything here. But as I was reading about this person, it just kept getting weirder. So let me give you a little bit more weirdness, because why not, right? What else were you doing for the next 2 to 3 minutes? Maybe less. I don't know. I'll keep it tight. All right, next paper. So, where did J. Bart Clausen start out? Started out here. Interestingly, his LinkedIn lists his MBA and does not list anything else for his training and degrees. I don't know why. I think he just left it off because he does seem to have. He does list himself as having other degrees, and back in the late 1980s and early 90s, he did publish a couple of things with real people, like normal papers. But this is a patent, and this appears to be the patent behind Clausen Immunotherapies, which is his single-person company. And the patent is for, get this, so basically this table up here. So let's make that nice and big. What you got here are common childhood vaccinations. And his entire idea is that you need to give the vaccinations on a different schedule. And he's saying, in the beginning at least, that people give these vaccinations too late. They leave them until the baby is a certain number of weeks old, and he says you should be getting them in, I believe, within the first 28 weeks. You should start vaccinating. And so I think he may be breaking it up into smaller doses because weirdly there are different numbers of doses on each of these things. But these are 4 examples of complete madness, just where he's giving babies vaccines and he's breaking up what could be, I don't know, a couple of vaccines into, what have we got here, 9 or 10 little mini vaccines, and give them to him in the first 18 weeks there. But he says that any of these schedules of vaccination would actually be just as good. It's just that you can't vaccinate the way you were vaccinating, you monster. Yeah. So he wasn't always completely against vaccines. The idea was just they're giving them wrong. Lately, he seems to be very much on the train that vaccines cause everything bad. And weirdly, yeah, they only cause bad things to happen around 3 years later. So that's the next paper. Actually, no. There's the next paper. Let's go there, because this is a piece of art, actually. Okay, so this is the idea that, and you can see this is a 2-author paper, but they're both named Klassen. So take that with Klassen-sized grain of salt. This one, I think, is extraordinary for its data presentation, for its graphs. Let us look at those graphs. So that's fine. That's a table. And from the table, it's showing that in people that got 4 doses, you had about 400 cases of diabetes per 100,000. And in people that got no doses, you have about, there we go, 340 per 100,000. So he says that's a big difference. And maybe it is, but you've also got 376 and 387 in here. And it looks like there's a pretty good range. Like, look at these. These numbers should all be the same, and yet they're kind of all over the place. So there's a big error on the terms, and he's summing all the numbers together into one big group to match them and do the analysis that way. And I don't know. I don't know that that's the best thing. Also, not the best thing is he's doing a thing called a one-sided t-test, which is where you assume that the answer can only be one thing before you start out, and then you test whether you were correct. Yeah. And there are a few cases where that is okay as a method, but in this case, I would say it is not okay as a method. Then look at these wonderful lines. We got 2 lines there that kind of wobble around each other. Really neat. We've got not a single error bar in the entire study. We've got what looks like one really bad 2-year period where there was a larger incidence than normal of people. And you got other years where the incidence was lower of them just developing type 1 diabetes spontaneously. Almost certainly nothing to do with vaccinations. This is the best graph, though. Let's full screen this. Just look at it. I mean, there are Miro paintings that are absolutely maximalist compared to this minimalist, wonderful, just piece. Just, oh my goodness. Yeah, you got 2 sort of wavy lines. Is that Salvador Dali's mustache I'm looking at? It's, yeah, fantastic. Anyway, real data shouldn't look like this at all. Yeah, you should have the points on there. You should be, it's stripping down real data and drawing some kind of line through it. And yeah, it looks kind of sketchy. It looks pretty sketchy. But that's not our only paper. We've also got this one, which is published in a thing called Hilaris Publisher, which sounds hilarious, yes. And they are on Bial's list of predatory publishers. And also they, in their editorial sort of on the website, let's see, it says they are reputed authors and academicians, whatever the heck that means, who offered their suggestions for improvisations, and I think they meant improvements. So you got people that either don't speak the language or don't care to proofread, or both. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, it's one of those journals where there's a good chance that if you paid the fee, you could probably get most anything published. Um, the only reason I show this one, which is another one of these papers that just looks like nonsense, is that look at this absolute orgy of self-citation. So self-citation is when you cite your own work. And typically, if there are other people that are working in the same field as you and coming to the same conclusions, you will have a wide variety of work from which you can cite. But not J.B. Clausen, J. Bart Clausen. Look at that. Clausen, 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 Clausen. Both of them. Clausen, Clausen, Clausen. No authors listed for variety. And I think there's another Clausen. Yep, there's another two there and there. And we may even have one, yep, toward the end. So that's how you, I don't know. I don't know. That's a red flag. That's another one of those red flags. Um, so this is a person that's done a not very careful analysis that kind of misses the point and doesn't really mean anything, and is just making a mess out there as far as I can see in scientific terms. I don't think there's anything in a single one of these papers that is worth thinking about anymore or basing any decision on. It doesn't look like science to me. It's dressed like science, but yeah, we dress the dog up for Halloween sometimes, and that doesn't make him a kid. Doesn't make him a person. So there we go. All right, this very lipsticky pig has been brought to you by Bad Science and J. Bart Clausen. Thank you very much. This has been Ask Dr. Ben.